We're going to go ahead and get started with our Commissioner Status Update meeting. Today's date is October 21, 2025. The time is 10 a.m. In attendance are Commissioners Eberline, Duncan, and Matari. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Public comment. Come on down. Just state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Hartman for the record. I'm hoping that during the discussion on item number 2, workforce analysis for Kootenai County Transit Department, that these following questions can be answered. First one is, why do you see the need for this study? Second one, are you planning to expand transit services and/or facilities? And the third one, where is the money to pay for this study coming from? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing none, we'll move on to our first item. Number 1, ABLE, Airborne Law Enforcement, 1 donation agreement. It's a discussion item, and Commissioner Duncan.
Yes, and I see Lieutenant Ellis if he wants to come up as well.
Come on down.
This has been quite the process of figuring out the best way for the operation to move forward. And apparently, this idea was brought up 2 boards ago, and it did not get 2 votes, and so it was dropped. But what we came to realize is the way that SAR is operating is the ideal way that the helicopter program should also operate. So in this whole process of looking at insurance and legalities and operations, it really, sorry, I'm a little froggy today. It really would be beneficial if the board would consider the helicopter being donated. Everything else would be donated as well, just kind of how the SAR operates. So there's the nonprofit that funds operations. So there isn't anything financially that would change. There'll be some savings on the insurance, and it will be way more legally defensible and easier to manage.
Thoughts on that?
You said way more. Well, there's still troubles out there. So how much trouble are we going to have with this? And why do we need a helicopter?
Sure. So the helicopter, again, is funded by donations from businessmen in the area who want this resource. We have a lot of backcountry issues, and when it was running for its year, maybe 16 months, it had some success stories. So again, the difference only would be the name of the ownership of the helicopter. Everything else, the funding would be the same. And
you know, I think it's important that we go back a couple years too and talk about this, because this was pitched to the board as a zero cost increase project, and that it was going to be a 2-year pilot program, just 2 years, and we were going to see what happens. And, you know, my big fear is that, you know, and I think this is something you've said before, you know, when you let the camel's nose into the tent, right, you end up with mission creep, okay? And so I'm not averse to this idea of having a helicopter, but what I am averse to is saying yes based upon just anecdotal stories. So I would like to look at, you know, the dates that this helicopter was in operation, what the missions were, what the results of those missions were, and look at it from how does it actually benefit? Because I'm hard-pressed to believe that if we take this in as an asset of the county, that it's going to remain at $10,000 forever. And if that's the case, then it needs to be structured that way, that if it goes 1 penny beyond that, then it just doesn't get funded. Or we need to see the benefit so we can look at this and say that the cost associated with a project like this, the benefit far exceeds the cost.
Yes.
And that's how we should be making these decisions, data-driven, not anecdotal stories. I do know that it did save one woman who, it was a big deal. But again, we have to look at the overall picture. What has it done? Its missions, who's it served, things like that. And then I think it would be a much easier decision for the board to look at, what's involved with making it an asset of the county.
Well, I think back in May, Commissioner Martin, we actually presented the actual statistics from everything, and I believe it was about 140 missions. Multiple lives have been saved. I know the families.
Yeah, but just real quick, multiple lives is, what number is that? And how is that arrived at?
I can tell you for sure, those two attest that their survival is to the helicopter. There's two of them, beyond just the other rescues we have or operations. But I can tell you that two families are attributing the helicopter to saving their loved ones' lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I say it, and I believe one life is worth it. Right now, the county has not paid anything more than the $10,000 that they were already paying to Spokane County. So you're asking for hard numbers. They have not paid a dime more.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't mind just seeing a report up all the way through, just, all the different missions.
Absolutely.
And just seeing, what the result was. I don't dispute the fact that there are situations where the helicopter can make a difference. The problem is that we have a finite amount of resources. So if, again, if this turns into something where there's that mission creep and it just, the expense keeps inching up over time, I think there needs to be at least some accountability to justify that expense. I'm not averse to this, but I would like to revisit that because I've seen language that says like it's been called for 14 search and rescue missions. But what were the results of those? And, and how much of it is attributed to the helicopter and how much of it is attributed to other factors? And again, it's not for any other reason than we just be honest and look at these things together. So.
Yeah, that's an easy statistic to provide to the board.
Okay.
We track every flight and what the outcomes of those flights were, so it's an easy one to do.
Yeah.
And again, we haven't asked for anything beyond the $10,000 that was already paid to Spokane County, and there is no intention for the nonprofit to do it. They continue to want to fund the insurance, the cost of it. So I don't see where any request for additional funds. Again, as you said, the 2-year pilot program with a zero balance increase maintains that. So we're not asking for more money.
Yep, I understand.
They want to supply a free asset to the community.
I understand.
And I'll mention there'll be a revisionary clause in there, so if the county ever decides that we are out of the helicopter business, then it would revert back to the nonprofit.
Understandable. Okay,
I will email the spreadsheet to all three of you.
that'd be great. Commissioner Eberline, any questions? Any other questions?
I'll pass.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is item 2, workforce analysis for Kootenai County Transit Department. It's a discussion item, and Commissioner Duncan.
Yes, so I believe that we have a need in this particular case. We did receive the ITD result of the inspection this summer, and they did have a recommendation. They didn't have a finding, but they have a recommendation to reflect the current staff and current processes that we're now following. And I think that part of the problem that was missing during the bifurcation of the departments, that we can't be objective in our own organizations, and I'd like to bring a fresh perspective to this. And so as we continue to negotiate with the cities, they know exactly what they're paying for, and making sure that we have enough staff in place and that we are not expanding the program, and that if there is a second that wants to go down this route, I have 4 organizations that I would get quotes from, and that I would bring a funding source back for that.
Commissioner Eberline. Commissioner Duncan, you mentioned continue to negotiate with the cities. What negotiations are we doing with the cities?
Just talking about the new funding mechanism and our funding methodology and what they will end up paying in addition to what they're paying now to make sure they cover ancillary costs as well.
See, the thing is that for several months now, we've been talking with the cities about them possibly taking it over with a joint powers agreement. And, the only things that I've heard are things like, why are we making a change? This is ridiculous. When are the county commissioners up for reelection? Things like that. I'm not hearing anything about how they want to be stakeholders with it. And, us getting money is not the same thing as being in a joint powers agreement where they bind themselves to giving money. And that's part of the problem I've had with this, is that they can change at any point in time. And if you look at the facts of the situation, right, Coeur d'Alene right now, I guess, is in a deficit with their budget. Hayden has chosen not to increase taxes, so I wonder where that money's coming from, because we're dealing with the law enforcement side of this. And so I'm concerned about the idea of what will be versus what should be. And if the cities are not interested in being partners in this, I have to ask, why are we keeping this? If it's not important enough to them and it serves them, why are we the ones who are doing this?
And I found out 10 years ago.
I mean,
And the cities don't want anything to do with it. They don't want to touch it. You fix it, you fix it, you fix it, me fix it, but they don't want to do anything all about it. And we're not in the transit system.
we're not in that business.
No, we're not.
And so I'm reluctant. If the city's message is we're not interested, then I have to ask, why should the county be interested? And if that's the case, I would even propose that this board look at putting a advisory vote on a ballot, because if the county says, hey, we don't want this thing, then I have to ask, why are we maintaining it? Let the citizens speak on that, because I know when it was incorporated, I remember back, what was it, 2014 with the transit center? I mean, that was a big deal. A lot of people did not want that. A lot of people didn't. And now it's a program that we're largely stuck with.
Okay. No second, so go ahead.
Okay, since the next two items are executive session, I'm going to go ahead and just ask for public comment. Did you want to speak, Mr. Kovacs?
Yes,
Are you speaking as an assessor or a community organizer?
an assessor,
Okay.
the assessor. Commissioners, the only comment I'd like to make is I've received previous counsel from my prior internal counsel that the purpose of an executive session is clearly stated in statute. The reason that you forwarded to me, Bruce, as to why you wanted to have an executive session for agenda item 4 was to discuss and develop a policy moving forward. That doesn't seem to meet the statutory definition for an executive session. I've also read the auditor's request to have an executive session, and that too doesn't seem, because they're looking to seek guidance. So these don't seem to be reasons that support an executive session. This board adopted a budget of $0 for legal expenses. That was done publicly. This board signed a contract and created financial obligations. That was done publicly. You're an elected official. You always talk about holding everybody else in this county accountable. You need to stand up to that and be held accountable as well. So anything that you want to talk about as far as guidance, you should do publicly. And that's my comment. But legal counsel is here, and I will defer to legal counsel to answer that question. But this purpose for an executive session does not meet the statutory requirements.
I will have questions regarding the litigation, so it will be directly related to that.
Okay. So we can talk a little bit about some of the policy issues, but the first one is item 3 on social media. Is there anyone on that can be discussed outside of executive session?
I think there's a 1D on that one.
Okay. So,
Okay, so, but if you want to like skip to number 4 and have part of the discussion in public, then that's totally fine. And then we can go into executive session, or we can do it after we come
yeah.
out.
I think one of the big challenges is the fact that the invoices that the county receives are over very long periods of time and sometimes cross fiscal years. And so I would propose that invoices for all services be delivered on a 30-day basis, monthly, calendar monthly, and that way we can get the bills in a timely fashion, and we can manage to that. And that's actually a very standard practice in a lot of firms, and I don't see why that's unreasonable for the board to ask for that here.
I'm not sure what you're jabbering about.
This is related to this item, and it has to do with invoices that the county receives for services, legal services, and they cover very long periods of time. I'm sorry, public comment's over. It's over. And so the point being is that because they cross long periods of time, sometimes fiscal years, then we have to, the accounting department has to open up their books again and put in these expenses that were not calculated before or expected. And so in this particular situation, I would propose from a policy perspective.
So this doesn't, with Cabela's case law, Student Fund, Pyatt, Fairway Development Company, Greenfield Development Company, Senator, Ada County, is that stuff we're going to be discussing? Because that's already public record.
No, well, what I'm discussing right now are just the invoices that the county receives from outside counsel. Okay, because that was part of the reason for this, for this executive session or this subject matter. The executive session is to go into the actual lawsuits themselves.
So this stuff's going to come up.
Yes, in
yes.
executive session.
Good.
Yes,
It needs to come up.
yes.
Somebody's going to eat crow on a lot of it.
So anyhow, so where's the board with this, with respect to the invoices?
I agree, it needs to be 30-day basis, and I don't know if there's any review understands department that can happen with these invoices, or if it's just the Board of Commissioners has to decide if it's reasonable.
Well, from my understanding, the rationale for going to outside counsel is because it falls outside of the purview of, or the ability of the prosecuting attorney's office. So I would argue that those services have a direct link with the prosecuting attorney's office for those kinds of things, because it would be no different if it was inside and there would be a direct link, people reporting to the prosecuting attorney. I don't know if the prosecuting attorney has any thoughts on that, but I wanted to put that out there as at least a discussion item.
Thoughts?
I have nothing to speak on that matter at this time. I appreciate the invitation, though.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else to be said, then we can, Clerk Locke?
The other direction that we need to clarify is when these invoices come in, so I think you guys are agreeing to 30 days, receiving those within 30 days, where do you want them expensed? So technically, you guys have money in your budget under the board for legal services, account number 8103. Last year, fiscal year 25, you guys budgeted $35,000. You still have $20,000 remaining, $238 in that account. For fiscal year 26, you also budgeted $25,000. So right now, these invoices have been expensed under the assessor fund or assessor's budget. I think it's expended out of Fund 46 too. So that's the direction we're just seeking from the board.
That was my understanding, that we approved it through Fund 46 because it had to do with revals and valuations and all that.
And also, we did approve money for the assessor's office last November.
Correct.
And that's memorialized in writing. So, the board has been very responsible as far as,
Assessor Kovacs would like to speak.
well, and I will give him a second here.
It's relevant to what you're talking about, because the county, when we're dealing with an outside attorney, we're not in control of when we get these invoices. I have emails from my prior internal legal counsel that conveyed to me that the plaintiff's attorney hasn't at times moved their lawsuits forward. It's not the county's lawsuit. It is the plaintiff's lawsuit. and that they're not aggressively pursuing their lawsuit for whatever reason, then things don't happen. But then when things eventually do happen, then we have to take action, and the outside attorney has to take action to respond to that. So we're not in control in terms of dictating when those invoices, because we don't get invoiced until the work is performed. And it's the issues that happen within the court that triggers the work. So it's not a question of confining the invoices to a time frame as though you're in the way that you're explaining.
Well, I mean, we're talking about services that are provided as recently as last April through this month. So, and every month in between, from my understanding, or almost. So the services are being rendered. They were just not being billed for in a timely fashion. And that's what's throwing the auditing department off, is because it's crossing fiscal years.
So I agree with that, but there's one of those invoices for another attorney that you have there that was received timely, and it was for this ending fiscal year, but we didn't receive it until after the transition from one fiscal year to the next.
That's fine, but
Which
But it was still timely.
we have an overlap in when we are receiving this and paying for last fiscal year.
As an example, there was work performed in April 2025. We weren't billed until 6 months later in October.
Right.
So every other vendor, whether it's a legal, an attorney or whatever, they understand that we're a government agency. We have accounting rules we have to follow, and they invoice us every 30 days with work performed. And if there's no work performed, then we don't get invoiced. And so that's just our concern, is I only have recent invoices with me, but I went back to even stuff from last year, and it looked like things were, we were getting billed a year and a half later almost. And so just asking for timely billing is something that my office would like to see happening.
Dave?
Can I just add a little sort of information to this? A lawyer certainly has a duty to provide an invoice to his client in a timely fashion. The client certainly has the ability, and I think the right, to go to the lawyer and say, I need to be billed, especially when someone else is paying the bill, in this case, the Board of Commissioners. Say, I need a bill at least once a month. And if the lawyer and the client can't come to an agreement on that, I think the client needs to look for another lawyer. Bills that stretch out longer than a month or two, the client's not being billed in a timely fashion. So I think it's appropriate for the board who's paying the bills on this to ask for invoices at least every 30 days. That seems reasonable. If there was no work performed, then the response is there was no work performed, right? Also, as a matter of policy that the board's addressing here, it seems like, we've kind of discussed this before, the board also should provide some kind of tracking mechanism for these invoices, because if there's a certain budget associated with a particular litigation matter, the board needs to be aware, the individual commissioners and as a board, of the running tally, so to speak, against that budget. So I'm not sure the auditor's office is privy to that budget for some strategy reasons, but the commissioners are. So I would suggest, as part of that policy, those invoices also be routed to the commissioner's office for that running tally tracking reason.
And I just want to follow up with what Dave said in regards to the budget. I've explained to the assessor that if I have never been given a dollar amount from anyone for a budget for these. If you were to do so and I were to make a budget adjustment, that's public record. And so if I'm going to go put a budget in our system for specific lawsuits, that's public record. And so, I keep having the same conversation over and over, and I keep explaining I was not included in any of these conversations, and once you loop me in to make a budget adjustment, it's public record.
Yeah, and I think the board's counsel brings a good point, because that's been one of the challenges is, normally when you don't get invoiced, you think that you're not having a service provided, meaning nothing is happening, that these lawsuits are in a state of limbo. But what's happening actually is a lot of things, month in, month out. And the board's not made aware of it because we don't see the invoices and we don't get feedback on a regular basis as to what exactly is happening. And so I agree that if we could start getting timely invoices, we could start seeing what's happening and we could keep track of that with the allocated dollars that the board has provided for these various lawsuits. And that's really where we're at, is we just don't know what is going on. And we ask for it, and then you get it 6 months later, in one big invoice that covers many months' worth of services. And
It's
so,
not happening.
well, it hasn't
We
been
need to get some bills coming in so we can know what's going on.
on a regular basis.
On
And
a
that-
regular basis, absolutely.
And so I would propose that we, have our counsel, at least the assessor's counsel, provide monthly invoices so we can see what's going on and we can maintain or ensure that we don't exceed the budget, the funds that we budgeted for these particular projects.
Yes. And then we need to address these kind of things.
And we will. And if there's nothing else to be said, Brandy?
So currently, any invoices that are received are reviewed and processed for payment by the assessor's office. Is the board wanting your staff to review these for payment every month as well? Because you're not going to have eyes on these unless you're specifically having the assessor send them to you every month. So I just wanted to ask, are you wanting your staff to review them before they're paid? Or are you comfortable with the assessor's staff continuing to process them for payment?
I mean, the problem is that if the board is going to approve something, I'd at least like to know what it is we're approving. Is it reasonable? Does it fit with the facts of the situation? All we can do is say yay or nay on a dollar amount. I mean, is there any way that, Stan, would you be open to at least reviewing these things to make sure that they fit reasonable time periods for what's going on, or is that just too much?
As far as that goes, I think it's already been put on the record many, many months ago that there's essentially a conflict with my office due to either capacity or a conflict. And so for my office to weigh in on that question, I don't know that would be appropriate. But to echo Mr. Ferguson's comments, that the relationship between an attorney and the client, it's client-driven. The client can ask for things in a timely manner. I deal with experts in my criminal cases. I know that when I'm getting close to the end of a fiscal year, I'm reaching out to my people who I'm waiting for bills to come in. And I'm saying, hey, the assessor's office has given me, or the auditor's office has given me a deadline. I need bills before this date so I can file them for this fiscal year. Mm-hmm. I don't let things go months on end and then ask for things to be
Fair enough.
a pair of weeks after the deadline.
Well, I guess if anything, just run the bills through the board. The board allocated the money.
Okay,
So I just want to clarify, should other electeds besides this board have a legal service line item and money budgeted in that? Because that was discussion before. Technically, the board with the prosecuting's office has agreed to seek out outside legal counsel. In the past, typically it's the approval of the board, these legal expenses. So would you like us to continue sending the invoices or having them sent to the assessor's office and then entered for expense under legal services under the assessor's account or any other elected account?
And before you answer, what I was going to say is if you want your staff reviewing the invoices monthly, it would make most sense for your staff to be processing them for payment out of your budget. But if you don't want to do that, that plays into the clerk's question.
Yes.
Thoughts on that?
I think we can still review them before we approve them in the payables batch without having to come out of our budget. Because again, it's two separate things. We have a BOE attorney, and then this is on the assessor side. So it's not technically a BOCC expense.
I would recommend you steer clear of the conflict of interest issue as well.
I think.
If we're in agreement on how we're going to handle these lawsuits, that's fine. But if we disagree, then there's a conflict of issue there.
I agree, and Prosecuting Attorney Mortensen made that case very well. So no one is seeking to create that kind of a conflict. What it is again, it's an issue of not getting timely invoices, not knowing what's going on, and wanting to understand what exactly is happening and where do we fall within the budget that was allocated to the assessor's office for these. The board did give you a budget for this stuff. It did. And it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we,
It's not
that,
been appropriated in the budget.
It-
We have an adopted budget and there's $0.
And we just got an invoice for the last 6 months. So how are we even supposed to put money there when we didn't even know things were happening?
Well, normally
So-
the board adopts a budget at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Except this came to us after the adoption of the previous budget. So we're talking about previous. It did in 2023 and 2024, when the 30,000,
But the board makes
put-
mid-year appropriations all the time. I have examples where the board has set aside money in a mid-year appropriation for a lawsuit. I have copies and examples where you've done that, but you didn't do it for this.
well, the board can do that based upon new information. A year ago, you gave us new information and the board agreed.
I've
The
come to
previous,
the board 8 times on this issue. It's documented. And nothing's been done. It's never been appropriated.
That's not
I'm
true.
sorry, that's just not true.
It's in the memorandum that I gave.
It's your memorandum.
yeah, your opinion doesn't make it fact.
It's your record. I'm providing you with your records.
Anyhow, is there anything else related to this?
I'd like to make one more suggestion, if I may, as a possible solution and path forward. In my experience in contracting and procurement, one of the things we did is we issued purchase orders, which is an unperformed executory agreement, and it encumbers funds, and it can transcend a budget year, to my understanding. I'm not sure that's exactly how it works in our financial system. But what we can do is if the board authorizes X dollars could be encumbered in a purchase order. And then when we get invoices, we could do payment releases against that purchase order at the increments that we're billed at. That way, the funds are locked up, and these lawsuits sometimes transcend calendar years. And so now what you're doing is you're dealing with it in a financial way, so you don't have to worry about rolling the money over to the next budget year. That's just a suggestion for the board to consider.
So if that were to happen, the budget for these lawsuits would be public record. And it was my understanding the board did not want the budget for the lawsuits to be public record. And I've already had the conversation that we are not going to use the purchase order function for a professional services agreement. We use that when we purchase goods.
What's the problem if you did that?
If we did what?
Not,
So if we were to put a budget in our accounting system that the board has given the assessor for the lawsuits,
yes,
it would be public record what your budget for the lawsuits is. And it was
Yes.
my understanding you didn't want that to be public
are we
record.
open or not?
Well,
The reason to not put the budget in the public record is you're revealing to your opponent.
I understand, Bela.
And they know,
I understand. I'm making a point, okay?
this was an accommodation for the assessor.
Okay.
This was not a request by the board per se. I mean, I'm fine if the assessor says yes, then, that's what it is. But this was an accommodation when these lawsuits came up.
So essentially, I'm gathering what you gave was a spending authority, not necessarily a budgeting authority of what you had to spend. So it sounds like you want these invoices to come in, both, they will enter it on the assessor side, it'll be sent to the board to review, and then from there, we'll expense it still under the assessor's legal service fund 8103. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to go into executive session for 1D and 1F.
I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 742061D and 742061F.
Make it so.
Commissioner Eberline?
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan?
Aye.
Chair Matari?
Aye. We'll start with Okay, 12:04, I'll take a motion to exit executive session.
Second,
Move that we exit executive session with staff to proceed as discussed.
second,
Commissioner Eberline.
aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chair Matari.
Aye, 12:04, meeting adjourned.